everybody. Today I'm going to do some pressure canning of some chicken that I got in the grocery haul up here. I'm going to chop it into pieces, and I'm going to raw pack it into pint or 500 ml jars and put some powdered chicken bouillon in there to season it. And then I'm just going to pressure can it, and I'll have chicken on my shelf ready to eat for a quick meal anytime I feel like it. Also, it leaves space in my freezer for when I want to have chicken as fillets or whatever. I'll have those ones in the freezer. I'll go dice these ones up. So come with me and we'll get cutting. So here is my packages of the 2 packages of chicken that I got from my grocery haul up here. I'm going to start chopping them up and putting them into these freshly sanitized jars from my dishwasher. So that is about 2.5 chicken breasts. I'm just going to make sure I get them all packed down. Might be able to get the whole rest of this other half of chicken breast. Because you want to fill it up to 1¼ inch, so just below here, because it will make its own broth. Try push it down as much as possible. Get air bubbles. And this is the chicken. I didn't do anything to the chicken. This is how we get it. Here in Canada, it's already trimmed, hardly any fat. Sometimes there's a tiniest bit of fat. But that's how we get it here. There's no trimming. But if your chicken doesn't look like this, you should trim any visible fat that you don't want. And yeah, so that's how we're going to do it. I'm just going to continue on. So it's about 2.5 chicken breasts. So for pints or 500 mils, you take, I'm using 1/4 teaspoon, but you use a 1/2 teaspoon of salt per jar. And I'm doing 1/2 teaspoon of bouillon. Actually, with bouillon, I'm instead just going to do 1/2 teaspoon of bouillon and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. The salt's optional, and we don't use a lot of salt in our cooking. Not like some things. So the bouillon, I think, is salty enough. So I'm just going to do 1/4 teaspoon of salt in each jar, and 1/2 of the bouillon. Or, yeah, it's bouillon. Yep, broth mix. Now we don't add any water because the chicken will make its own broth. You could cook the chicken and then you'd have to add water or broth, but this way is just easier, honestly. There we go. Then I'm going to wipe the lids. So I take a paper towel with vinegar. So you wipe the rims, and then put a lid on, and a ring, and you just do it finger tight. And let's continue that with these. There we go. So here is my All-American 921 pressure canner. I'm putting some vinegar in there. And then I'm going to see how many of these fit. If I have to do a second layer or not. I filled it with warm water, not hot, because you don't want the cold chicken. I have two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a second layer, and I'm going to fill up some jars with beans, and I'm going to pressure can those too. Actually, I managed to fit all of the jars in here. I'm actually going to switch this one out. Big one in the center. And there we go. Because it actually fits. That way I won't have to do some more beans. I'll do beans in a separate video. So I'm going to bring this, go put the lid on. So turn it so that the arrow matches up to the groove, and make this sure that locks in. Then we start putting the bolts opposite sides, and just do finger tight. What, not on that side? Just tighten these. And then have this come to a boil. Once the steam comes out here, we will time it for 10 minutes, and then we'll put the weighted gauge. For my area, it's 10 pounds per pressure, and I'll be doing it for 75 minutes. So it's been spraying, you can see, for 10 minutes. Now we put it on a 10 pound pressure, put it on the hole, and then this will jiggle, and once it's jiggling, that means it's at 10 pounds pressure. So that's the jiggling. It's now just past the 10 pounds. I'm turning it down to bring it down a bit. Also, I didn't notice this before, but it says even on this thing, remove before opening. So you remove, which is obvious, you remove the weight before you open the lid, but we're not doing that yet. Now that it's jiggling, I'm just turning it down. I'm starting the timer for 75 minutes. Since we're doing pints, if we were doing quarts, I would be doing it for an hour and a half, 90 minutes. So, this will slow down a bit, and then we'll do counting. See, it goes quiet for a bit, and then it jiggles. That's what you want. At least for it to jiggle a few times a minute. Now it's been 75 minutes, so I'm turning off the heat. I'm going to wait till this comes down to 0 before I take that off. So it's come down to 0 for a while. So now I'm going to remove the weight. You'll hear that. And then you just start to unlock the wing nuts. And then always remember to twist and lift and away. I mean, you can see all that steam. You don't want that coming after you. And there is my cooked chicken in a jar. Isn't that beautiful? And then we take them out. See, they made their own juice, their own broth. So when I'm going to use it, I will have some broth in the jar. This will make a great, quick meal. When I want to do like a casserole dish that calls for cooked meat, or enchiladas. But now I'll have, how many? 9 2 cups worth of cooked meat, roughly. 1.5. Which is, I think, enough to feed my family of 4 for a casserole. I might have to use 2 of them if I do something where the chicken plays more of a important ingredient. But there we go. And you always put the jars on a towel. See some of these lids. The heat makes them loosen. So you just finger tight them for overnight, for 24 hours. Let them sit, rest. Look at those beautiful bubbles. And this will be nice and juicy chicken, easily shreddable. So unlike crock-pot chicken, which tends to sometimes get dry or chewy, this is pressure cooked chicken. It's just being cooked in a jar. So it'll be just tender and perfectly cooked and shelf stable. When it cools, this broth there's fat in there too, so it will solidify near the top. So it might not look great, and if you want to, when you take it out of the jar, you can scrape off any of the fat that you don't want. It's going to be very lean, but the fat might be needed for more flavor. But what's nice is that it has its own broth already in the jars. And don't worry if it looks like there's less broth than meat. Like here, this one, it wasn't quite filled to the top. That's fine. Even, as long as, stuff is, there's stuff in there, like it could be exposed to air, it'll be fine. It might be discolored if it's on the shelf for a very long time. So just use ones like this where there's less air, like more air first, compared to other ones that are filled closer to the top. And there you go. Super easy and cheap. Buying stuff on sale, canning it, put on your shelf. If you have a pressure canner, I'm doing this on a glass top stove, which technically is not recommended for an all-American, but it works fine for me, and I keep the pressure level the whole time. Just some of the older glass top stoves, the glass is thinner, so it's the size and the heaviness of the all-American canner that's not recommended. But I've done 2 layers of jars in here, so that extra weight, and it hasn't broken my stove. That's about as rebellious as I get. So, feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and comment below. Bye, friends. Hopefully you enjoyed this video.